Welcome to Let's Talk About the Deep Stuff. I'm your host, Sean Kneese, and I hope you all are continuing to have a good new year. And it's a year of new beginnings and new adventures and new everything. But today I wanted to talk about, because before on the show I've talked about how your thoughts can kind of shape your reality. And I've also had other episodes where I've talked about like mindfulness and staying in the present, or I've had guests that have talked about that. This show's covered a wide range of the big topics. We talk about the big things on the show, and that covers a wide range. But I was just thinking recently, like how those two things tie together, because like in um, Buddhism, it talks about like how your perception of the world and the world you see around you is like formed with your thoughts, and then talks about like kind of freeing yourself from your thoughts and stepping outside your thoughts and just seeing what is. But then Neville Goddard talks about like how your thoughts create the world around you, and then it's like kind of about like mastering your thoughts. Or like James Allen, who wrote like As a Man Thinketh, talked about how when you become the master of your thoughts, it can kind of shape the world around you. So like using your thoughts as a tool. And I was thinking about like, can those things kind of coexist? Can the mindfulness and being present and not being attached to your thoughts, like can that kind of go along with also like using your thoughts as a tool to like create the life you want, like rather than letting your thoughts rule you, rather than letting your mind rule you. And I have my friend Jonathan Jung joining me for this. I know he's very well versed in all different kinds of spirituality and religions. Um, Maybe I'll just let you kind of take it from here. Like, what's your thoughts on this topic?
Hi, I'm Jonathan. I have known Sean for many years. Just so people have a little bit of uh, background, I've been a study student of religion and the occult for many years. I'm a certified meditation teacher, and my passion is just metaphysics, spirituality, the occult, and meditation, especially, and Buddhism. My thoughts about this whole topic. Yes, I think like consciously directing your thoughts towards certain desired goals, um, in a certain sense, can very much be in alignment with the Buddha's core teachings. The Buddha actually taught the negation of desire, in the sense that it's clinging and craving that causes us to suffer. Wanting. So let me backtrack a little bit. He taught that existence itself is dukkha. So the word dukkha is a funny word. When we literally translate it, it means suffering. But a better translation, not so literal, but a more meaningful translation, depending on which is which can be known through the rest, studying the rest of the Buddhist teachings, as well as the Pali languages in which the Buddhist teachings were written. They it means it more means like stressful. So his students asked him, "What do you mean existence is suffering? It's stressful." So he's not saying that everything we like all experience has a miserable quality to it. What he is saying, this was the first sermon he ever gave. He gave it to the 5 monks after he realized his enlightenment. He walked over to where the 5 monks were staying, which he used to who he used to hang out with, and he told them, birth is stressful, death is stressful, old age is stressful, sickness is stressful, not getting what you want is stressful, getting things that you don't want is stressful, being around those who are disliked, who you dislike, is stressful, not being in the presence of those who you do like is stressful. Many of the core elements that we define as our life is very stressful. There's a dissatisfactory component to it, even a painful component to it. the first noble truth, that existence is suffering. The second noble truth is that there's a cause to this suffering, and it's clinging and craving. More specifically, there's always going to be desire in this world. There's always going to be desire. There's always going to be conventional desires. If the Buddha's mom and the Buddha's dad did not desire each other, the Buddha would not have existed. If my mom and my dad did not desire each other on some level, I would not have existed, and so on and so forth. All there. Not only that, we need to desire food. we desire food naturally, and we need to do things to increase to that, so we make a semblance of worldly security is normal and natural and not at all contrary to the Buddhist teachings. For a long time I was studying Christianity and Islam and many other religions, but I take solace and I take refuge in the Buddhist teachings primarily at this point, because in my own direct experience, I can observe them as true. I can observe them that they are observably true. You don't even have to be a mystic to realize that birth is stressful, death is stressful, old age, sickness is stressful, not getting what you want is stressful, and so on and so forth. So how does this correlate to the topic you're bringing up? Well, even in the Dhammapada, which is an early Buddhist text, a very popular one, the first chapter, it says, all that we are is the result. The first verse of the first chapter is called the Twin Verses. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts. It is made up of our It is made up of our thoughts. If a person speaks or acts with an evil thought, pain follows them, like the wheel that follows the foot of the ox that draws the carriage. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts. It is made up of our thoughts. If a person speaks or acts with a pure thought, happiness follows them like a shadow that never leaves. He beat me, he abused me, he defeated me, he robbed me. And those who harbor such thoughts, hatred will never cease. He beat me, he abused me, he defeated me, he robbed me. And those who do not harbor such thoughts, hatred will cease. For hatred does not cease with hatred at any time. Hatred ceases by love. This is an old rule. The world does not know that we must all come to an end here, but those who know, their quarrels cease at once. And this goes on. That first, it's not a giant book, but I'm not going to recite the whole thing here. It's still something I'm working on doing, is memorizing that text. But how does this correlate with attracting your desires? I mean, the Buddha himself says our experience is primarily made up of our thoughts. Our perceptions are internal. How we experience our perceptions are internal. Our thoughts are internal. Our feelings are internal. This makes reality appear very subjective. And I have heard it said by many New Age thinkers, you're the creator of your own reality. You're. I don't always like that language, but I do think that even that you can find it in the Bible, you can find it in all the different religions, that what the thoughts we are thinking now over and over again with emotion about ourselves, about our lives, about others, about everything in our lives, directly influence our futures. So in a certain sense, you can draw, for example, I am aspiring to become a non-denominational Buddhist priest. I would like to start a non-denominational Buddhist temple, focusing on the early Pali teachings, but also engaging in Mahayana practices, later practices, and even Vajrayana. And how am I doing this initially? I'm writing all my ideas down. I'm writing them down, and I'm focusing on them every single day. I kind of fell off the bandwagon for about a week here. For the last week, it's almost like I got, like someone woke me up by shaking me and started slapping me in the face with a brick. Like my whole routine was thrown off for the last week. But nonetheless, I'm getting back on this train, and I started today actually to just, write down what are the steps to starting a nonprofit organization focusing on the early Buddhist teachings, but also having a very non-denominational and open theme to it. And it's a matter of, for me, it's a matter of doing research. How do you start a nonprofit? What are my goals with the nonprofit? How do I accomplish those goals? How do I attract funds to help further this nonprofit? How do I attract people who want to be a part of this? And some of my goals are I have a lot of humanitarian. I like what Thich Nhat Hanh has called engaged Buddhism. It's very much focused on social action, creating a better world with your actions, because some Buddhists in the world, they will very much isolate themselves, and they will, sit in monasteries and caves and focus on their daily work and teaching the Dhamma to the local community and meditation. And that's all wonderful. But I think there can be and is a strong place within the Buddhist teachings for social action. So we're starting small, but we want to have a food pantry and we want to have like a cafeteria with vegan, gluten-free, healthy meals. We want to give community meals free to the public on a regular basis, but also have a little store with Buddhist meditation paraphernalia. These are all basics, but we want to help and minister to the homeless, whether they accept the Buddhist teachings or not. We want to feed the local communities, people who are in need of food. We want to give them food, whether they accept the Buddhist teachings or not, whether they have any interest in it or not whatsoever. It's not conditioned upon that they accept the tenets of our organization. We want to help people find become clean off drugs and alcohol through the Buddhist teachings. Because if there's one thing that you could apply to your life from the Buddhist teachings that is so ever universally practical, it's reducing craving, reducing addictiveness. And so you can actually, for this portion of our social services, helping people become clean off drugs and alcohol, we would use the Buddhist teachings as a core basis for becoming clean and staying sober. And if people don't resonate with it, then there's lots of other free programs they could use. And we're not opposed to that, of course. Our organization will never claim that we are the best way or that we are the only way, or we will never claim that the Buddha himself never claimed, as far as I have read and seen and learned, he never claimed that his teachings are the best or the only way of achieving relief from suffering, because that's the core message for me from the Buddhist teaching, is finding relief from suffering. So how does this correlate with what you're talking about, creating your future, creating your reality? We draw our dream life to us when we are fully present. And we are fully present when we're reducing expectation, when we're reducing desire, when we're reducing mental and emotional tendencies that take us away from being fully present. And I although I don't ascribe to certain language, rhetoric, or language of the New Age people, you create your own reality, I do think that focusing your thoughts to accomplish your desires, to accomplish your dreams, career, financial security, is very practical and important, nor is it contrary to the Buddhist teachings. Does that give a decent... Can you...
Yeah, and I guess there was a couple points I want to make. So I think it's just interesting that they both those kinds of teachings recognize the same truth. It's just two different approaches to it. Like the Neville Goddard, or like the Hermeticism. Hermeticism is like the root of it, and like the law of attraction is kind of the watered down.
Law of attraction is one law of the Hermetic principles.
Yeah.
There are many other Hermetic principles that are also true.
Yeah, because like there's the law of I looked into while there's like the opposites. There's the I mean that's a whole other topic, but like I remember there was the different there was also like what you give comes back or something like that. I remember I looked into it. I just forget like what the different but that's a whole other. But like it's interesting like how like the Hermeticism and the Neville Goddard, James Allen, all the ones that talked about using your thoughts, like it recognized the same truth. Like Buddhism recognized the same truth, but it's just two different ideas, like what to do with that truth. Like um, Buddhism, it's detach yourself from the thoughts, recognize that the thoughts shape your subjective reality, but then be present and just kind of observe the thoughts and be outside the thoughts. And then the other one's like using the thoughts as a tool, and those two things can kind of coexist. But I think it's all about balance because I think, like you said, I think it's good that you're talking about like how your nonprofit you want to start wants to like get involved and make a difference because there's too much of this like mindfulness or spirituality is being neutral, and I don't think being neutral with injustice is right. I don't think being neutral with like racism is right. That doesn't really help anything if you're not speaking out against stuff like that. If you're just being like, oh, I'm going to just be neutral and detached, like that's not really to me. That's not really being spirit. Like Thich Nhat Hanh, who you mentioned, like he was, you know, he got involved with like protesting the Vietnam War. I know he's been politically and socially active in his life. He was, and he was also spiritual. So I think those two things can coexist, and it's kind of
Yeah.
like about a balance. And like you said, like you're using your thoughts to kind of set short term goals, which is usually the more effective way than like a grand, far off goals. You have to kind of do things step by step. You can have an end you want to get to, but it's good to do things step by step. But like even the Buddha, like he started a whole religion, so he had like he in some ways he was using his thoughts to kind of make something too. But I don't know if you have anything to add to that. Or...
Yeah. So, as much as I adhere to Buddhist teachings, and I could get into why more later if it comes up, and like what they mean for me and how I would apply them to my life. You know, the Buddhist teachings can be a slow but healthy and safe way to personal transformation. There's always an element, and if I'm speaking out of place, I'm just a beginner with the Buddhist teachings. I will always consider myself a beginner, and I'm not well versed in all of the Buddhist teachings. There's a lot, and there's a lot of different flavors, a lot of different focuses, a lot of different emphases. But there's a place for honoring your shadow. And let me elaborate. So if you look at it, your shadow, it's the darker part of you.
Mhm.
Thich Nhat Hanh himself actually talks about this, where he used his anger as fuel for positive change, and not just in himself, but in his world. He used his anger about the injustice uh, uh, towards his people, he's Vietnamese, um, as fuel you know, to be to be a peacemaker, and to not just to be peaceful, but to be a peacemaker, creating peace in the world. Peace doesn't just mean the lack of fighting; it also means equality. It means
Yeah.
justice. Um, and it, he was actually banned from his own country for like 50 years or more, and a long time. I don't remember how long it was. It was several decades at least, um, because he was getting involved and he was staying neutral, in the sense that he wasn't saying that the South isn't right and the North isn't right, but we need to
Yeah.
talk. We need to have dialogue. We need to create peace. We need to stop fighting. We need to stop killing. And both sides said, "Oh, you're not with us. You must be against us." So I feel the same with a lot of issues, in the sense that in this country, um, I do not. I think if you want to vote right, like Republican, then you should vote right and Republican. And I think if you want to vote left, Democrat, then you should vote left and Democrat. The issues that I'm standing for are issues I believe transcend both issues, both sides. And we can see that the dynamic, not only between the right and the left, but the definitions of the right and the left in different areas are changing very rapidly in a lot of different ways. And for me, I do have a little bit of agreement and a whole lot of disagreement with the right, and I do have a little bit of agreement and a lot of disagreement with the left. And for me, I am neutral, but that doesn't mean I do nothing. That doesn't mean I don't care. That doesn't mean that I'm not pushing forth for change. Thich Nhat Hanh didn't choose a political party. Thich Nhat Hanh didn't choose a side. Thich Nhat Hanh didn't promote one political side over another, but he did promote his values in a very loud, very forceful, dynamic, powerful, and yet loving, peaceful way. Peace.
Yeah.
Stop fighting.
Don't you think sometimes like there is like a clear right and wrong? Like say like one group stands for like ethno-nationalism and oppressing certain minority groups, and another group is like, no, we're not going to do that. Like in that situation, when you say like there's a clear right or
When
wrong,
you're
like
saying particular groups, are you referring to the Republican Party and the Democratic Party?
well, not. I'm just saying like in general, like it wouldn't even necessarily have to be the U.S. Like,
Are you asking if there are groups that I believe that are correct and other groups that I believe are
yeah, like do
incorrect?
you think sometimes like when there's a situation like is there a do you like sometimes there's a clear wrong side and a clear right side?
Of course, but I'm not making it about a particular party. I'm not making it about we're right, you're wrong. We know, you don't know. We're enlightened, you're stupid. Both sides in this country do that to each other on a lot of different issues. And there is a hair of agreement here and there on some issues. Like, for example, at least in rhetoric, in as far as politicians speak, um, outsourcing. Both sides will say, let's not outsource. Let's give America, let's not exploit the poverty of other nations and rip off American workers. Let's let both sides, often them, many of them will say, let's not outsource. And this is why I consider myself neutral, at least in the bipartisan establishment in this particular country, is because what both sides say they have done and say they are doing and say they will do for both sides is very, very different from what they actually have done, are doing, and will do. And the media, whatever side you pick, will go along with their preferred party and propagate the dishonesty. And so, are you asking me if I believe that there are groups who have a correct position on certain issues? Yes, of course.
I guess what I'm saying. I didn't mean to. Yeah, I'm just saying like because I definitely have my issues with the left, and there's a lot I don't agree with them on, and I know there's different kinds of conservatives, and there's certain things I'll agree with,
right.
like
There's
maybe
different.
libertarians
They're not homogenous anymore.
But then at the same time, like I do think like the far right, it's all about like racism and like nativism and stuff. Like I feel like that's a clear like I feel like they're wrong. Like I find them more wrong. Like as much as I have like issues with like the left or like other people, like I just feel like that kind of intolerance like just is wrong. Like there's a clear right and a wrong. I don't know.
I agree. I mean, I think anybody who's going to be listening to this podcast is probably not going to be enamored with the perspective that some races are better than others, or if they're. I would hope. I don't know. I'm just assuming. I don't. Yeah, I believe in. I believe. Let me be clear. So I'm not. I don't want to be misquoted or misunderstood. I do believe in the strong equality. I do strongly believe in the equality of races. That's one thing our group will focus on. Actually, not so. Two of the elements that I have included in the creation, the design of the values of this group are we being LGBTQ inclusive. Another emphasis is gender equality, and this could grow. I could include, I'm still in the designing process of it, but I could include all sorts of different things that I believe in. And some, let me ask you, what exactly are you asking me?
Oh no, I guess I was just asking because you said that like sometimes like it's not about picking sides. I guess I was just challenge. I was just challenge. I was
No, I
challenging
don't
that
mind
more
the
from like a
challenge. I
general
just want
perspective.
to
Like,
hear.
is there sometimes a clear right and a clear wrong side? That's all I was saying.
Yes, on certain
Yeah,
issues, and on other
yeah,
issues, no. Like,
yeah.
like
So rather than like group people, like you say, like there's a clear wrong and right
I would say
on
that
a
there are
certain issue.
values and ethics that are
Yeah,
clearly right, and there are values in our ethics that are clearly wrong. I'm just talking about this country. Does the Democratic Party have a monopoly on all things right and correct and true? No. Does the
no,
Republican Party
no,
have a monopoly on that? Hell no. Not no.
no,
No. But don't get me wrong. I'm not. Yes, there are groups of people who I would say hold correct ethical views, and there are groups of people who do not. The
and I know
KKK is a terrible example. Is that they are clearly wrong. They have okay. When I was in 8th grade, I had to do research on fringe groups. I did a project on the KKK, and I had to suspend my own what I consider to be correct beliefs and values for a moment, just so I can see what are these people thinking. Why do these people think the way they think? And it's not unfair to say their bottom line belief system is ludicrous. Their bottom line belief system is nonsensical. They have a ridiculous alternate history of the world that revolves around a European centric interpretation of the Bible. Like saying that the
yeah.
the
Even though it
Jewish.
didn't originate in Europe, which is interesting.
No,
So
it's completely ridiculous. It's
yeah,
completely. There's no other history. There's no history book in the world that supports any kind of semblance of. I mean, obviously, I don't have to explain it. Most people aren't a part of that. Most people aren't so
yeah.
insane out
That's
of
a
their minds
fringe
that
part of
that I need to
society.
give an explanation. But what I am
Yeah,
saying is that's a group that is clearly wrong about their core worldview. Obviously, there are others like it too. There's extremists all over the world of different ethnicities and religions, and
yeah.
they're obviously wrong. That's why they're extremists. I mean, they're not the norm. They're not the convention.
I guess what you're saying is like people on average. That's kind of what I think. Like people on average, like a lot of them want the same things, even if they seem opposed. Like if you're not looking at the extremists, like there's more common ground than we realize, and we get stuck in these separations that we kind of make in our minds. And the Buddhism and that's where separating yourself from your thoughts can be beneficial because you're not um, just tied to this like ego or like this identity that separates you from others, where you won't empathize with them or see their perspective or see where you have common ground.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That fundamentally, a lot of people, the majority of people, deep down want the same things. It's just a matter of how do we get there. I think most people in the world, like most people who I come across, would say they want a more peaceful world, a world without violence, a world without fighting, a world without starvation, a world without injustice. But it's a matter of how do we get there, and what does that look like, and what would need to change for that to happen. A lot of people won't even consider it. They say they would like it to happen. They would say they would love it to happen, but they won't consider it in the sense that they say it can happen, it won't happen, it's never going to happen. Pie in the sky, hippy dippy malarkey. I would disagree, but I mean, this is a giant conversation, and this is but that's what's essential. Actually, is the
Yeah,
conversation, the dialogue, and when people refuse to have the dialogue, that's where the violence starts. Or at least it's a
yeah.
part of it.
I think the issue isn't difference, or it's like not accepting that difference. Because I think it's good that people have different ways of seeing the world and different ways of looking at things, but it's the way we deal with those differences that's the issue. With the violence, and um, I think if we got to like that state you were talking about, we wouldn't necessarily have to not have like different interests or different ideas or different philosophies. It's just more of a better understanding or an acceptance that we're different in some way. I mean, recognizing our common humanity too, but also accepting that we're different in some ways, I think is okay too.
I mean, there'll always be, what I like about the early Buddhist teachings is that they're about reducing psychological suffering in yourself, and thus, as a response, reducing suffering in others. In the early Buddhist teachings, they don't talk much about the oneness of all reality. That may be true, maybe. I don't focus on it anymore because I don't experience it in my own direct experience. I don't experience when I look at a chair, I don't feel like, oh, I am the chair.
So it's
When I
more
look
about being present in your subjective experience rather than like being feeling interconnected objectively, is what you're saying?
interconnected, I would use the word present. Interconnect. It's more like, I mean, yeah, Thich Nhat Hanh does emphasize the interconnectedness of all life. He talks about the name of his order that he founded as the Order of Interbeing. And that's wonderful, and I'm not denying any of that. But for me, when I look at the core Buddhist teachings, the Buddha didn't teach that everything was one. As a matter of fact, I believe when one of his students asked him, "Master, is everything one?" He stayed silent. And they said, "Well, is everything two? Is it dualistic?" He stayed silent. And when everything is everything separate, he stayed silent. And I guess the point is, he very much he repeated over and over again that the core of his teachings is about reducing psychological suffering, and a belief in oneness is not necessarily going to reduce psychological suffering. He defined reality not through positive, like not through positing the oneness of reality, but he actually defined reality through negation. So he said reality is dukkha, that there's always going to be a suffering quality to it, a stressful, dissatisfactory quality to it. He also talked about anicca, impermanence. So that there's no permanence. And then the final point was anatta, which means not self. So going back to dukkha, I'm going to pair dukkha and anicca together, and I'm going to correlate it. I'm going to try to correlate it with what we're talking about. So anicca means impermanence. So what I like about the Buddha's core early teachings is that I can observe them in my experience, in my life, in myself directly, without the need for positing any esoteric truths. For example, so impermanence, anicca. I think a lot of people can see, if they have a little bit of self-awareness, or they're just paying attention to their senses and to their own experience directly. Reality is constantly shifting, changing. It's impermanent. Our thoughts, they're shifting and changing from moment to moment to moment. Our feelings are changing from moment to moment. Sometimes it's more gross or obvious. Sometimes it's very subtle. But the feelings are shifting and changing from moment to moment. Sense perceptions. Our experience of our sense perceptions is shifting and changing from moment to moment. Sound, for example. Sound, it's constant. If you listen, it's constantly arising and falling away. Sounds are constantly coming up and leaving. They're being born and they're dying. Arising and falling away. Constant. Our experience of our vision, my experience, in my experience of my visual perception, there's change as I look around the room. They're not that I can see a chair physically changing or something, but it's like my experience of what I'm seeing is changing. And then you get back to like science. Cells are constantly being born and dying. Constantly, there's a constant renewal of cells. The senses, what we smell, a scent arises and it falls away. It doesn't just stay there. It's not permanent.
Yeah.
So if everything,
Nothing's permanent, but then at the same time, there's always something. So that's why change is eternal. Like there's no beginning and no end. It just changes form.
yes, and definitely, like I would.
It almost seems like in it seems like you could be an atheist and a Buddhist at the same time because it's not really.
Yes.
It's not really talking about like a god. It's just about like being present. It's about accepting death and not being afraid of death because it's just another transition. Like, I mean, if you think about it, like we've been dead longer than we've been alive. Like being dead is just like how it was before you were born. So
you can be a Catholic or you can be an atheist, and you can apply the Buddha's early teachings to your life and find great relief from suffering, great transformation, and great inner peace. And so the Buddha defined personhood. He called it the aggregates. That what defines you as a person are the aggregates. Mental formations or mental fabrications, which includes thoughts, thought forms, maybe moods, and then also feelings, form, like the body, what we perceive physically, but also consciousness, states of consciousness, and perceptions. So how I experience either a formation or a sensation, whatever. But those aggregates, like we talked about, are shifting and changing from moment to moment. So it's like, is there a permanent self in those? Is there a glue, an adhesive glue holding those elements of personhood together that you can call a self? Is it a self? And not only that, we when people want to relax, they want to sit down. They want to relax. They want to just let go. They want to be quiet. Maybe they just want to watch TV or they just want to read a book, or whatever it is. They want to do something relaxing. And it's like they want to settle. They want to be quiet. But if what comprises personhood is a constant cycle of changing and shifting, then there is always going to be an element of dukkha, of stressfulness, of pain, in what the experience of being a person, being alive in a world that's constantly shifting and changing from moment to moment. And then, going back to anatta, if like say you're watching your thoughts in a meditation, thoughts arise and then they fall away. If you are exclusively, if who you really are, if your thoughts are yours, if they are your own, if they are who and what you are, what happens when the thoughts go away? Does that mean who you are goes away? Does it shift? Does who you are, does it vanish?
Yeah.
The Buddha posits that not self, anatta, that our experience, that everything we perceive and experience and know is not self. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, that's why it's like I feel like kind of considering both these, because like it's easy to get rigid and like like it's good. It's thinking about both of these, like because like I know there's a lot like that new thought stuff is popular and it has its use for like achieving your goals, but it's also like to not be too attached to it and kind of see like outside of that too. That it's like, because I think there's a risk of it being kind of selfish. If you're always just caught in like I'm making this reality, I'm doing like, then it's like, oh, other people who are suffering, they're just not they're not creating the reality. They're not. People in poverty aren't creating the reality. Then you would think that because then by that logic, then you would think people who are privileged are automatically more virtuous or more focused or more, and that people then you would ignore. Then it's harder to have empathy than if you're just only looking in that rigid way.
I've actually heard.
Yeah.
I've actually heard some speakers say that You want to empower others, then turn away from their suffering. And it's like, are you good? What about the children born
Yeah.
to impoverished or war-stricken countries? Are they at fault? Did they not think the correct thoughts
Yeah.
in their previous life? Like what it is lacking empathy. And people might accuse some Buddhists of the same, where it's like, oh, well, they believe in karma or karma, reincarnation. In my experience, and what I've read from the Buddhist teachings and from the teachers who I've respected, it is very much inappropriate to say, oh, that's your karma, deal with it, that's your karma, I'm not responsible. What is appropriate is to help the person in need, or at the very least to just not add any further pain to their experience. If you can't help them, it is inappropriate to say this is their karma. And you don't have to, with the Buddhist core teachings, you don't have to believe in karma or reincarnation. You don't have to believe in spirits. You don't have to believe in temporary heavens or hells. You can, but those things are negligible, or they're not essential to the Buddhist core teachings. And that's what I'm intending to promote. And to correlate with what you're saying again, I'm using thought power to put out this, like I'm writing all my things down and reading them on a regular basis. I've even recorded myself reading all my things like several times in a row. And I'll put an earbud in and listen to it while I drive. So yeah, and then I do, of course, listen to the Buddhist teachings on YouTube. There's a lot of free stuff, just people reading the sermons right on YouTube.
So they can coexist then, the mindfulness and you can kind of incorporate both. That's kind of, I guess, the main thing I was thinking about with this. Like, is there a way to incorporate both, like using your thoughts as a tool and the detaching from the thoughts and that kind of thing. And another thing that the new thought, or like the law of attraction, all that, or even just like anything like that, where it's like your thoughts create your reality. A flaw with that is that you can always control what thoughts come into your head, and that it's somehow bad to have negative thoughts or to feel bad. But I think that's a part of being human. Like, how are you human if all the time like every thought of yours is happy and positive, and like a lot of sometimes growth comes through the negative, comes through the pain, comes through sadness, and like that's how you have empathy for other people and their suffering. So it's like, and you can't control the thoughts that come into your head. You're always going to have some kind of negative thought come to your head. So if you just repress it and you try not to have it, then that's just repressing something that's there. I think it's, you allow that thought to come in and you detach from it and you don't let it control you is more the secret. And that's some of like what Buddhism and meditation teaches. So.
What I like about mindfulness is that it's not cultivating, it's not cherishing or justifying negative thoughts, and it's also not cherishing or trying to think positive. It's coming back to a state of neutral. It's almost like a reset. So instead of negative, positive, it's just reset, going to a place of emptiness, going to a place of clarity, going to a place of spacious awareness.
But the thoughts come in either way, though, right? Because I know like thoughts just come in automatically. It's just that you don't label them as negative or positive. Is that what you're saying?
That's part of it. That, yes. For me, it's when you're not attached to positive or negative, then the mind, but you are engaging your attention at the same time. When you're not attached to seeking what you want or running away from what you don't want, whether that be an experience or just a mental experience, a certain series of thoughts, you become gradually calmer. More, the thoughts settle down. And it's actually from that space of feeling settled, feeling calm, feeling aware, not being attached to any particular experience. It's that's the place from where you focus on your dreams. We're talking about like negative thoughts. I love looking at mushrooms. I love thinking about mushrooms because mushrooms, they grow in the darkness, and then they also they feed off decaying matter. You could look at yourself in the same way, but like they grow in darkness and they feed off decaying matter, but they can be so healing for people. In the same way, if we allow our darkness to be, if we, negative thoughts, negative feelings, we don't push it away, we don't suppress it, we don't repress it, but we just sit with it and just kind of give it a place in your own heart to find solace and comfort. Like you accept your pain into your heart with compassion. Say you can stay here. I'm not going to push you away. I'm not going to judge you and call you you're bad. That pain can grow into something beautiful and healing for others, like a mushroom. And in the same way, like anger about injustice. Anger can be transmuted into strong ethical boundaries. It can be transmuted into compassionate action. Greed can be very much easily transmuted into abundance, and then generosity, sharing, helping others. And so for me there is a place for loving and honoring your darkness, and but not pushing
Well, that's
it
the
away.
only way you keep it from controlling you too. If you don't know it, if you don't know that side of yourself, then it can come out in ways you don't expect. Or if you know it and you understand it, then it's easier to control it and not let it control you or make you do something you regret or whatever.
It's almost like when in meditation, if you're sitting doing some kind of meditation and the darkness comes up, it can be very easy to try to push it away. But what's more healing is to go into it and to feel it and to look at it and to be with it, to sit with it. For me, coming up with like a little bit of a mental framework, like there's me, and then there's the pain, and I'm relating to it. This is all happening in my mind, and saying you can live in my heart. You can rest. You can relax. I won't push you away. I won't judge you. Stay in my heart. It just it stops being what it is. It's transmuted into light, into something more powerful and palpable that looks like some kind of positive action that benefits the world, even if it's just your world.
And that's where that one, I know there's that one story in Buddhism of like the Buddha inviting Mara. Mara shows up. Mara is like, I guess, like the desire mind. Well, I don't know how you would describe Mara exactly, but he invites Mara for tea instead of, like, Mara's like the darkness or like the negativity. I don't want to say it's Buddhism's version of Satan, because like that, I don't want to use that like
It's more archetypal
word, but
than literal.
yeah,
Most Buddhists
it's like he invites it for tea, like he's not pushing it away. I think that relates to what you were saying about not pushing away your darkness. He invites Mara to sit for tea. He doesn't tell Mara to go away. He invites Mara to have tea.
Yes, so have tea with your pain. No, would you like with some honey and lemon with that?
Yeah. But yeah, I think you addressed like one of the main things about like how to balance, like, because I think it's okay to like have desires, have ambitions, but like can there also be a place for the detaching from the desires? And I think you kind of explained that, like if you're happy in the moment and you're enjoying your life as it is, then that leads the way for more success in the things you want, because you're not as attached to it. You're not in this state of lack. And that kind of ties into some of the new thought stuff and everything to a bit, that like what you attract what you are, not what you want. But I think it's also like we were saying, like there's also a risk of that being selfish if you get too caught up in that. So it's good to like be aware of like others and their suffering too.
The Buddha taught the middle path. So not denying desires so much that you're ascetically mortifying yourself, So he, it was only after he decided to satisfy his desire for a little more food that he was able to have the energy to sit down and find his enlightenment. So he was starving himself for a long time, and no desires, no barely any food, just enough food just to survive. And then finally he got fed up. He's like, no, I'm gonna have a big full bowl of rice with milk. And he sat down, he ate it, and then he had the energy to do it. There will always be a desire for convention. I don't think that the Buddha wanted conventional desires to be mixed up or equated with clinging and craving. Craving is more like addictive, addictive wanting, addictive, and clinging is like addictive holding on to, and like, but a desire for a partner, a desire for money, a desire for security, a desire for 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 happiness for your loved ones, whether they agree with your beliefs or not.
Yeah, I
That's
mean, we
normal,
wouldn't even be having
natural,
this.
and good.
We wouldn't even be having this conversation if I didn't have the desire to start a podcast and
Right.
like this whole conversation. If there wasn't desire on some level like that for me to do like a podcast and like have these conversations on a podcast, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So.
Buddhist monks desire food. How dare
Yeah,
they?
if you didn't have the desire to learn about Buddhism, you wouldn't know about Buddhism. And if you didn't have the desire to learn about religion, so it's like, yeah.
Yes. It's yes. So, and using your thoughts to attract, I do that. I don't think it's incompatible, and I don't want to. I don't. Although I do very much would like to be a Buddhist priest. I am. I I love Hermeticism too. I love Hermeticism. I love all that stuff. Um, but I've just settled with the Buddhist teachings because they've actually helped me to grow into who I want to be. They've helped me to let go of desires that I have had, or addictive qualities that I have had that nothing else has helped. And they're just straightforward. They're just simple. They're just straightforward. They're clear. They're not hiding behind symbolism or esoteric language. They're not hiding behind. They're not guising themselves in like deep metaphysical poetry. It's just straightforward. Life is change. We seek solace. We seek comfort. We seek peace. We seek solidity. We seek security. Oh, we can't find it in a life that's constantly changing. Well, the irony or the paradox is you find security, peace, and comfort when you stop looking for security, peace, and comfort. And the Buddhist teachings are techniques on how to reduce the search for peace and comfort. Because even like conventional ways, watching TV, which I still do, and play games, whatever, those are ways of like reducing, of finding peace, security, comfort, joy.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's nothing wrong, there.
You could mindfully play video games. You could just take in the mindful moment of the video.
I suppose you could.
Yeah.
Be mindful of the way your hands are moving and the way you're
Yeah.
feeling, the way, be mindful of, I don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in a way, we're kind of like this is kind of like a real life, but like we're kind of like who we are, like in this physical form is almost kind of like an avatar in a way, It's like the body isn't really like yourself. The body, Sean Kneese is just like the identity I am in this, but like the core of who I am, it's like the observer, like there's a self beyond that.
I don't even like to say, yes, I would agree with you. At the same time, I personally don't even like to posit anything. I like to say there's just nothing observing these things. It's just, some Theravada Buddhists will say it's a field of knowingness, or maybe a constant cycle of change, but there's no self happening in it. And like, what's observing all that? I mean, anything you could say is a definition or an established, all these words are saying they have established meanings that we have defined. that all these words we're saying are sounds that we have given meaning, and those correlate to objects, whether they're mental objects within one's awareness, or right. I agree with you. There's only so much that I can say, because the Buddha himself said, do not mistake the finger pointing for the moon to the moon itself, to the moon for the moon itself. So it's like, it's not.
And that's been kind of echoed in different religions too, like that. Yeah, like in Taoism, like the name that can be named is not the name, and then I think in the Bible it says something like the letter killeth, but the spirit, or I forget exactly what the line was. It was something like but
the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law.
Yeah. But I guess anything you want to conclude on, or I mean, I guess we've covered everything, but maybe just some final words you want to say with the episode, or
Wherever you are in life, and if you're listening to this, and if you're getting something out of this, don't stop trying to heal yourself. Don't stop trying to become a better version of yourself, or a better you. Don't stop trying to be a better person. At the same time, you must accept yourself. You must accept yourself with your flaws, and own yourself. Own your actions. Own your actions, because those are the only thing that are truly yours. And you cannot escape their consequences. So keep improving, but also accept yourself, including your flaws. And it's in that space of self-acceptance where the pain can unwind and relax and take a nap, wake up and feel refreshed, and it's no longer so heavy, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, actually, my final thoughts for this episode were going to be something similar, that don't stop going for your desires. I mean, it's not exactly what you said, but it relates to it. It's like, don't stop going for your desires and what you want, and making the life you want, but also appreciate where you are too, and look at what you do have. Be grateful for what you do have, and how fortunate you are now, and how good this moment is now. Because you got to appreciate the moment and living right now too. And I think from there, that's makes it easier to achieve what you want to, when you appreciate what you have and you're grateful. But anyway, this was a good chat. Thanks for coming on, John. It's been good to have you on the show. And
thanks for having me, Sean. It was fun.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, and do you have anything you want to plug? Like, I don't know if you have anything.
I'm sorry?
Like for people to follow that you want to plug or anything? I don't
Oh,
know.
not yet, but I will.
Okay. Cool.
I'm good.
But that's about it for this episode of Let's Talk About the Deep Stuff. Follow the show for future episodes on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, social media. Let's Talk About the Deep Stuff. That's about it for this episode. We'll catch you on the next one.